Good morning and welcome to Set to Love. I am Eva Payne and I am so excited about our guest this Monday morning, Gina Moffa. She is a grief and trauma therapist. She's been in practice for 17 years in New York. We had a chance to chat a little bit before I hit live, and I'm really excited about this conversation. We collectively, as not only a community, but as a nation and as a world, have been dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of trauma over the last couple of years, if not, over the last decade. So Gina's going to help us sort through some of this and give us some tools. So thank you guys so much for being here. And here we go.
My name is Eva Payne. Welcome to The Flow Life, where we define love as live open, value everything. On this podcast, you are dialed in and set to love. Let's go for a ride.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eva. How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. I love meeting cool people online and people who are really just excited to share their wisdom in whatever space they're in. And that's something that I see you doing on Instagram. And so thank you for taking time out of your practice that you're in to be on social media in this really helpful way. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I love connecting with people doing good in the world like you. And no, I think, look, what I think is so wonderful about social media is that we have been in such a time of confusion, collective trauma, of people feeling so isolated and alone. So many parts of our lives, not just people who have experienced death during the pandemic, but endings of some kind, really feeling just isolated emotionally and in all of these other ways. So what you're doing and what other people are doing on social media is really the most important work out there, which is connective, and bringing people together, which is inevitably the most healing thing we have in humanity.
I love that. Yeah, I know for my kids, being online, being able to connect during this pandemic has been truly a lifesaver. Some of them have made best friends that they'll who knows, maybe one day they'll meet, but they live in Michigan or they live like somewhere else, but they're still able to connect. So for as much negativity as there is on social media, I do think that there is a big, huge silver lining for us, and it's brought us here together today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, what you were talking about before, I don't know if you want to talk more about trauma.
Yeah, let's dive in. So before we just dive in really quick, give people a little quick bio about you, who you are, what you do. I mean, I know I kind of introduced you, but if there's anything else you want to say, and then let's just start with like, what is trauma? And then we'll just go into that whole idea of like the individual trauma versus this collective trauma, and what do we do about it?
Sure. We're going to try to solve all the world's problems.
Okay.
My name is Gina Moffa. I am a licensed psychotherapist here in New York City. I've been doing grief and trauma work with different populations here in New York for the past 17 years. And, I believe, though, that the pandemic itself has brought up the most trauma and grief and, how closely related they are. Grief to me is trauma's ugly stepsister. You can't really have trauma without the accompanying grief with it. So not so much necessarily always the other way around, but definitely within trauma. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm excited. I'm always really excited to talk about trauma and grief. And everyone is always like, can you
what?
What does it say about you?
No, but here's what I want to say. What it says about you is that you're real, because there is no getting around grief and trauma if you're a human being, right? I mean, I had just mentioned this to you. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and they talked about how trauma lives in our DNA for up to 14 generations. And so if that's real, 14 generations, then it's like, it is part of the human condition. And so how do we get better at accepting that and working with it and incorporating it into our lives in a loving way versus this sort of push it under the rug or under the bed. We don't want to talk about it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to face it. kind of mentality, or I don't have any trauma, I'm fine. My kids don't have any trauma, they're fine. They're smiling, they're happy. But that's not true. I mean, especially if it's 14 generations. I mean, I'm dealing with stuff from great, 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 great grandma then eventually, right?
Yeah, you are. I mean, epigenetic trauma is still a really new field within
Mm.
trauma. It's still being researched. All of the DNA and the scientific and neurological testing is still being done. But there is enough evidence out there that suggests that we do have trauma passed down from generation to generation. There was a book I read a long time ago called Secondhand Smoke. And it was by a professor from Fordham University called Thane Rosenbaum. And it really talked about, it's a personal story, but it's fiction, although, close to life. But it really is about how he was coming from a family of Holocaust survivors, and how that trauma passed down based on fears, based on coping mechanisms, personality patterns, relationship dynamics, and all of that because of trauma suffered by the generation before him. And I love the idea of calling it kind of secondhand smoke in a way,
Mhm.
because it really is something that we're just in the room, but if you look at, people's capacity to tolerate and, distress and regulate their own emotions, a lot of that, believe it or not, does come from, our parents. And it comes, have you heard the term trauma reactions?
Mhm.
So much of it. And we're not just born with trauma reactions. Where a lot of that, it comes down from us. So I say this all the time, and it's part, and I'm writing a book right now about modern grief. And in it, I say, we're a society that really values winners and keepers, not
Mm.
losers. And how funny that is, since so many of us struggle with keeping and winning and being enough, and, being able to tolerate pain and all of that. But I also say is to live is to have trauma. To live is to grieve. Look at the stages of your life. You're not going
Mhm.
to a next one without leaving something behind. And, we don't look at it like that often.
I think, at least for me nowadays, and especially just in all around flow and trying to figure out how do people live in flow versus just being in little flow states. And I think, to me, winning is being able to handle the oh crap moments that come into our lives, is being able to, like, when the grief comes in, like, hard things are going to happen. You're a human. There's going to be traumatic things. You're going to lose people. You're going to get sick. You're going to lose a job. Things aren't going to go the way you want it to go. Things outside your world that you cannot control, like COVID, are going to happen. And the people who win are not the ones who just like push past and don't deal with it. I think the people who win and the people who are successful are the ones that go, okay, I see you. Here you are. And now how do I deal with this? What's the most loving next step I can take? That's what I tell people. What is the most loving next step you can take? But
Amazing.
how would you help someone cope through, like, if someone comes in and says, okay, I'm done. I'm over this whole thing, all of this. I don't want to go on to social media anymore. Everything's about COVID. Everything's about, like, all this, just, there's so much stuff. It's never ending. I feel like I can't pull myself out of this trauma news cycle that we just find ourselves in.
Yeah, well, with that person, I mean, I hear that all the time, right?
Mhm.
Especially, when we had even more political upheaval, social unrest, there was so much going on over the past 2 years, in addition to seeing constant numbers on the screen of people dying. I mean, the media does a fantastic job of keeping us terrified and glued to the screen. But beyond that, it's not like you can necessarily avoid just the media, because everyone has access to a smartphone and everyone is recording things or showing things or posting things. So
Mhm.
for that particular example, I would say you've got to delete the app. For this is a crisis mode, right? If you come to me in that place, I can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
To give a specific set period of time. Okay, let's take the next 7 to 14 days and delete social media apps, get it off of your, if you have TV, don't turn it on to that, to really just kind of Control Alt Delete and wipe the slate clean. Then let's see what's actually happening underneath that, right? Because you might actually be anxious about something else. And this particular constant barraging of trauma is hitting you in this other way that's causing anxiety that is actually related to something else in your life. So part of therapy, and what I think is so great about it, I'm a little biased, is though understanding, right? What we do is help people understand what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. And I believe that if you understand what you're experiencing, you can have more mastery over it. And then we always know what to do if we can understand it. But if we don't understand what's going on and we're just like, I'm at the end of my rope, but I don't know why, that helplessness and that feeling of just complete powerlessness is where people wind up getting like so overwhelmed with emotion that it becomes much more compounded and much more urgent and much bigger than it would have been if we could just parse through what's really happening. And there's a lot of trauma out there.
How do we begin to sort that through? Let's say we don't have a therapist, and our education system certainly doesn't equip our young people with tools on how to deal with challenges as they come up. We don't really have that enough of the social emotional learning into our curriculum. So how does someone out there start to sort through what it is that's going on for them?
It is hard to do when you're just in it. I'm going to be honest, right? It's like you can't save yourself from drowning if you're drowning. So it's really, you can't understand the mechanism of learning to swim while you're drowning. So it is really important to either talk to somebody, talk to a friend, get some other outside perspective. It's unless you're going on Google, like, do I have trauma right now? There are things that are just really distressing events. So if people are on your website right now or your YouTube and your amazing teaching platform here, they can learn about trauma in this way. There's little T traumas and there's big T traumas. Everybody's got one of them, right? The little T traumas are just really, really distressing events. You lose a pet, you've been harassed at work, you've been bullied, you're having interpersonal problems with friends.
Those are little traumas.
Little traumas. They can be really extremely distressing, right?
Yeah.
But they don't actually qualify to be PTSD. But just know that
so what are the big T's?
You're like, that's not big enough.
I'm like, those seem big to me. What else is there?
They do feel really distressing. I don't want to minimize that.
Yeah.
That for sure. But all that to say, everyone's got that, right? The bigger T's are the things that qualify for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, which are, witnessing an accident, natural disaster, sexual assault, war, those very, very large things that are outside of our ability to cope, right? We all have inner resources. When it comes to little T traumas, right? Say you lose your pet. It's terrible for anyone who's lost a pet. It's really, really painful. But you can still cope and you can still function. There is still an ability to keep going. With a really big trauma, which has happened a lot for the past 2 years. These are people who have sort of lost everything, say, who've lost people in COVID, who've lost a job, a business, who've gotten long haul COVID, who've been really ill and lost their sense of identity. This has all happened, social unrest and being a part of that in some way. That is something where people are not necessarily expected to have all of the resources to cope with that. And there's been so much of that just collectively, just compounding, just piled on us as a country, that it doesn't surprise me that people would say, I don't know how to get through this. What do I do? But the truth is, like Eva, everybody knows how to take care of themselves. It's just a matter of, are you going to prioritize that? When things feel too much and overwhelming. So what do? We should stop. We should pull away from something. We should take really good care of ourselves. I call it survival care sometimes. When I'm burnt out, when I don't have the answer, when I don't have the patience, I say, all right, I'm going into survival care. That means for me, really important, strong boundaries. If I don't want to text people back because it feels like too much, I will not. If I can't call people back and it takes me days, great, that's what I'm doing. If I have to say no to plans, I'm doing that. And basically I say whatever feels nourishing, give yourself the permission to do that. It's really, really important that we do that and not just give into FOMO because we've been locked up for 2 years.
Yeah. You know, when I was going through my divorce and I finally found a therapist, the first thing she asked me was, do you feel safe? Where
Yeah.
you live in your home right now, do you feel safe? And I
Mhm.
thought, well, yeah, I feel safe. And I mean, I lock my doors at night. I've got an alarm system. Like I feel safe. But it's always sat with me because I think when we don't feel safe where we are, and I mean, I guess it's hard with COVID because it's just in the air, right? But when you don't feel safe, it's really hard to pull yourself out of crazy town to even begin to think
Yeah.
logically about what is the next step because you're just ruminating, right? It's just going around and it's all you can think about. So I think that idea of like really trying to find or create the safe space. I mean, is that something that you counsel people on as well?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't feel safe anyway, and I think also your therapist probably meant emotionally safe.
Yeah,
Are
probably.
you,
I went to physically safe, but yeah,
no,
maybe emotionally safe.
are you surrounding yourself with people who are good to you, who listen to you, who are kind to you, who are people you can go to in the crisis, people who are giving you that nourishment and wrapping you in the comfort that you're looking for right now? Are you in any of those, contentious things? Is work safe in your life? I think that stuff is really important. And, I talk about boundaries all the time because of safety, right? If we're just here and we're here and we're here and these people need something, and obviously being a mom is like that. People are always needing you. But what we fail to really understand, even as parents, is that we have to model self care. We have to model what it looks like to take care of ourselves. Or that's how some of that, say, trauma, for example, or trauma reactions, or just unhealthy coping mechanisms start to come about. It's really important that we show and we take care of ourselves and show that it's okay to take care of ourselves, to put that oxygen mask on first, to put those boundaries up, to say, to your kids or whatever, I'm with you and I will be there at 11 a.m. But this is going to be my time to do things for me, or
Mhm.
whoever it can be, a friend, a colleague, whatever those boundaries are, especially in this time, because we've been underconnected and overconnected, traumatized and grieving, and not just death and not just losses, but really safety, just like you were talking about, predictability,
Mhm.
trust in our leadership, trust in the world, trust in medicine, because this was something they were all learning while we were learning it at the same time.
Mhm.
How scary is that?
No, it's really scary, and I'm just gonna be legit, like, I don't know who to trust, I don't know what to believe. I feel like a lot of it is, like, what I just keep going, "What is going on in the world?" And then I just go back to, "Okay, I can't control, whatever's going on out there, so all I have control over is my little circle of influence," right? People who listen to the show, my family, not that I even have control over any of that, but I really ultimately only have control over me, but I think, but my reach, like I'm not going to go run for politics. I'm not going to go, even though I have ideas of ways things can get better, I just feel like all I can worry about and focus on is just my little circle of influence
Yeah.
because I don't know where this is going. But how do we move forward out of this? I mean, I feel like we've been sitting here now for 2 years, almost coming up on 2 years of this craziness. And it feels like, and I'm sure generations have gone through this, whether it was World War I or World War II, where collectively as a world, there's just craziness happening. And eventually we come out of it and then we find ourselves back in it again. So, what can we learn from this time so that we can pull ourselves out and evolve through it and then have tools to be able to handle whatever is down the pipeline?
Oof. If
I know
only
it's a
we
lot,
had,
but
I
give me
was
what
going to
we got.
say, if I could only answer that question in a way that could lead to change. I say exactly what you're doing. I say all the time, be about your business, work
Mhm.
on yourself, work on your own inner peace, work on your own health, work on your mental health. Because if we look collectively, we're in a really mad time right now. And I say, like, we can't make positive change if nobody is seeing the same reality. So what do we do with that then? I take it inward, right? And I say, all right, I can't control, just like you were saying before, I can't control what these people believe and what these people believe, but I can control my ecosystem here. And it isn't going to do me any good, nor my physical or mental health, if I'm worrying constantly about what's going on over here. And believe me, this is a very, very strange time in our world right now. I know I'm not alone in thinking that. But, I do believe that if we could each at least, right, work on our own health and our own mental health and our own, issues, and take very good care of ourselves and our families and that kind of thing, maybe at some point, if we're all mentally healthy, we can begin to see the same thing. And it may not be, what's happening politically or anything like that, but maybe we can start to see connection and being important, finding common context being important, coming back to love, all of these things that sound, spiritual, but are really important, even in psychology, we do need to do that. And it's not always about being right, but, because there's confirmation bias everywhere. So who's really right? Who knows?
That's
So
why I say live open, value everything. That's my acronym for love. Like,
love
we're
it.
all on our own journey, and your journey is going to be so different than mine. Your perspective of how you see the world is going to be different than mine. And I can hold space for it all. You can think whatever you want to think, believe whatever you want to believe. And I just try to just approach everyone in every situation with love. I just think, what is the most loving next step? What's the most loving response that I can give myself or my kids or whatever? And then owning when I'm in crazy town with them or anyone else. Like, okay, I was totally
Love it.
somewhere else, or like just being aware of my own, when I shift into that grief, or if I shift into that sadness, or I shift into that negativity, because it happens. I'm daily, but becoming aware of it. And so that way I can kind of dial it down a little bit. And so I don't live there, because it's far too easy, I think, for us to find ourselves living in this crazy town place where we're watching the news all day long, thinking like any moment something's going to change, or any moment some savior is going to come and fix everything, whether it's a politician or an alien or God or whatever. It's like, we are the solution, right? We have to just work on ourselves a little bit at a time. And hopefully that ripples. And like you say, we all kind of wake up to what is really going on. Because there's a lot of things that just don't make sense out there in the world that I think we are smart enough. We can figure this out in a loving way.
Amen to that. 100%. I'm backing you up. And I think if we could just spend more time on what we have in common, as opposed to all of the divisiveness, we would maybe take it to a different place. But, as they say, you're either in a place of fear or you're in a place of love. And we've been in a place of fear for the past, for several years. Let me not just say just from the pandemic, but that certainly didn't help things. But now it would be really wonderful if we can continue working on ourselves and doing what we can for the community around us. When in doubt, I always say, for people who are really stuck in a depressive place, believe it or not, give, help others, be of service. There's nothing more self-loving than giving of yourself. And that's what we've got. That's really what we've got. And that's around the world. Like, that goes for everybody.
I agree. Gina Moffa, thank you so much for being on the show today. How can people find you? I think honestly, connecting with your Instagram is just one small way of just having that positive feedback in your news feed when you open it up. So where can people find you, and how can they connect with you? And do you do teletherapy also, or do you have to be in New York to come see you if someone wants help with their trauma and grief?
I'm working on doing finishing up like a coaching licensure type of thing, so that I can do. I'm getting so many calls from out of state, and I hate saying no because I know I can help. As of right now, I'm just licensed in New York. And it's hard because I'm in the process of writing a book this year that will be coming out in a year. So I'm also doing a little bit less. But you can find me on my Instagram page at Gina Moffa, LCSW. And also, I am doing free pep talks. So I send them to your phone or your email every single day. It's just a little bit of pep, just to keep us going, and a little pick me up, some kind of self-awareness too. If you want to go to my website, it's ginamoffa.com. And I always joke about it. I will send you irregular newsletters.
I love it.
I'm not going to bother you or inundate your inbox, but if there's a tip or, a quip or some wisdom I want to share or some news, I will send it your way. I promise I won't be those annoying newsletter people, but I really, really value the connectedness with people in the community. And so, I would love to have that closeness with people around. So yes. So contact me in any one of those ways, and I would love to connect with
I
you.
love it. Thank you so much for this work you're doing and for spending 17 years in this space, and especially being in New York. I mean, you've been through 9/11 in a very intimate way, all the way through to all of this. So you are a warrior on this front. So thank you so much for being a leader for all of us out there. And, to hear you say that we can get through this with love, it's like one of those woo-woo things I just want to believe. But hearing it come from someone like you, it instills even more belief into me that really there is a way for us forward. So thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you.
Love in action.
Love in action. I love it. Thanks everyone for being here today on Set to Love. We'll be back next Monday with an awesome guest. Gina, hang on, and we'll see you guys all soon. Please share this. Share this with someone who could use it. I know you know someone in your life who's gone through some grief or trauma, because we all have. And if they can connect with Gina, then you're doing a service for them. Have a great day, everyone.